Challenge layups. Phil and Annabelle are back. John is off tonight, and hopefully I'll be back for the finale next week. That's right. We have made it all the way to about as close to the end as we can be until next week. One episode left. I feel like I started this when I was 22 years old, and I'm pushing 30 now, kids. I just feel like this has been going on and on. It was actually funny. I was looking at the first episode John and I did, and it was in December, and here we are now in April, coming up on the finale. The final pairings are no who will be running out there, but that's okay. There's a lot of drama circling all of that stuff this week with the pairing switching up and all of that, but it's all settled now. Annabelle, what did you think about this next to last episode of the challenge?
I think this was a pretty cut and dry one here. I was happy to see a little bit of a change in a winner for the daily challenge, just because Casey and Leroy have been dominating so much. So it was good to see Cam and Corey get a win. And I mean, Cam, like, she pretty much did the whole thing on her back because she had to get there first to give them the lead with the puzzles and everything. So she just did phenomenal. And that was fun to watch for sure. And it was unfortunate to see Kyle go out how he did. You never want to see people get injured, but I mean, this was kind of what we were anticipating with Fessy, with the hall brawl, with Kyle going home. So all in all, I think pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it feels like the hall brawl is a really intense and really fun challenge, but it's just too violent of a thing nowadays, because I always look at, like, if you ever watch an old movie from like the 40s or the 50s, the big A-list actors from back then, they weren't that muscular. You know, they weren't these Mr. Universe type looking guys. They were pretty normal. They had pretty normal looking bodies. Right. People weren't getting cut up the way that they're getting cut up now. Right. And even like you look at the NFL, linemen used to be 230 pounds. Now they're 360. Like, now they're massive. Right. And so when you start looking at that, hall brawl to me is just one of those things that it's too dangerous when somebody as big and as good as Fessy gets in there, because Kyle never stood a chance for a second in this challenge anyway. So now he's got to go out there and gut it out for what? This isn't like facing a fear of heights or being claustrophobic and getting on an elevator. This is literally putting your body in harm's way when you know that the only outcome is going to be getting absolutely decimated by the other person. It's a good challenge, don't get me wrong, but it feels like when there's this much of a disparity, right, it's a problem. Like, it's just unsafe. And we see Kyle's finger do that. Thank God it was only his finger and not his arm. How are they getting him out of those walls if it's his arm? Yeah.
No, I totally agree. It's definitely a challenge where, like, the matchup is critical to the success of the challenge. And this was not a good matchup for anybody but Fessy. But I think Fessy would probably just bulldoze almost anybody. Maybe not Leroy, but I think he would win that challenge probably 99 times out of 100. So not a good matchup. I mean, again, we anticipated a hall brawl. Still a little boring to see it after seeing it last week, even though it was for the men and not the women. But yeah, I agree. This is not good for anybody's safety, especially Kyle's. And I'm glad that it was only his finger.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, I like this challenge, but it's just, when there's this much, they should almost have an alternative when it's like, okay, we have 100-pound difference between competitors, so we need to figure out something else. You know, there should be a restriction on that of some sort. It's the same reason why a heavyweight doesn't box a lightweight. It's the same reason why when you're growing, it's why offensive linemen go against defensive linemen. Offensive linemen aren't going against cornerbacks, and wide receivers aren't going against defensive linemen. Yeah, they might get tackled by them, but you're built differently, you know? And I think that this just, I don't know. It's just, it's violent. It's vicious. It's cool. You know, it's got all the things that really pop about the challenge. Right. But when you see a matchup like this, where you just know that Fessy is going to steamroll Kyle, and it does end up with a broken finger, like, Kyle didn't need a broken finger here. No. He should have just, at the end of the day, he should have just forfeited before it even started and said, I'm not going to win anyway. But it's this whole, I'm a tough guy thing. You're never going to win that. It doesn't matter what you do. You're never going to win that.
It is an I'm a tough guy thing, but it's also like a respect thing, a respect for the game, a respect for the show, a respect for the competitors, and a respect for TJ, because TJ would never let you hear the end of it if you did decide to forfeit and walk away. There was one season, I think it was Free Agents. This one guy, he got hurt in like the first round of an elimination, and medical came and checked him out, and it was like his face, like he got hit in the face really hard, and they're like, well, I mean, it looks bad, but he's like fine to keep going. And he
Mhm.
was like, no, I'm out. And they were like,
Mhm.
seriously? And he's like, yeah, like this is my face we're talking about. And like,
Yeah.
it was like really vain. And he never came back after that. TJ never let him back on. So I think it was the right move for Kyle to like make the short term sacrifice if he does want to keep continuing to come back onto the challenge, because TJ really just has no respect for quitters.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, I think about like if I'm on the challenge, there's no way. It's a waste of my time. Like, it's not worth me possibly breaking my neck or my collarbone or my arm for that. And maybe it is for Kyle. Maybe that's why he goes on the challenge and he's a psycho, and everybody who plays reality TV is crazy in some way or another. But maybe that's why this is meant for him. Ultimately, not very eventful. We knew that he was going to win. We knew Fessy was going to win as soon as we saw that this was a hall brawl. So really nothing too dramatic there. Although I did like the plan, and we're kind of working our way backwards, but I did like the plan that Kyle and CT and Leroy and Nani tried to come up with to try to get it to be Fessy versus Corey to save Kyle, because Nani really wanted to continue running with Kyle and to prevent Leroy from losing Casey in the end. What did you think about this plan? And was there any part of you that ever thought it was going to work?
I mean, I never really thought it was going to work, just because Cam and Corey were double agents. And I mean, Cam would not want to betray Corey, and she would not want to betray Leroy. And with the position she was in, she would have had to have betrayed both of them, just because Fessy ended up being the house vote. So her options were Leroy, or her option was Kyle. And that's just kind of what she had to do. And like, I don't know, it's not personal, but she's trying to give herself and Leroy the best opportunity to win the money. So I don't know. I mean, it seemed like a good plan in theory, but like just this close to the end, you have so little wiggle room, so few numbers to work with. It was just kind of like a too little, too late attempt, in my opinion. Kyle's been hanging on by a thread for a while now.
He's been hanging on by a thread for a while. See, my only thinking is I feel like because they're always looking towards future seasons, it does impact the season at hand. They're worrying about what's going to happen in season 37 if I come back, what's going to happen in season 38 if I come back, who's going to work with me, who's going to be bitter. I mean, the whole Corey Nelson storyline this season was based on another season. Like, it wasn't based on anything that we saw on this season as a new watcher. It's not based on anything I know. So when I sit there and I watch this happen, I say to myself, okay, why do you care so much, though? It's the end of the game. If you throw Corey down there and he beats Fessy, Corey's got to come back and he's going to pick you anyway. Like, there's no way he's not going to pick Cam, because he's going to know that that's his best chance to run the final and win it. Yeah. So to me, it almost felt like they're too worried about feelings that have nothing to do with this game. And I think that's the biggest problem with knowing you're going to be playing again and knowing that you're going to be coming back. It just really ruins the strategy in the moment, because it's too worried about something that I'm never going to watch, which is season 37 of the challenge.
Yeah, that along with the fact that, like, I mean, it's like the constant problem with like when we have a Survivor returner season and there's all this pre-gaming and it's stuff that happens off camera that we don't see, but it like really, really affects the game, especially as we saw in Winners at War. I mean, it's the same thing with this. I'm sure there's a lot of like off screen stuff like between seasons, and because these people have come back so many times, there's all of these pre-existing relationships, and like they're not being as cutthroat or as strategic as they probably should be, just because of, you know, it is more personal for them.
It absolutely is. So all of that happens. It's no surprise that they end up picking Kyle. And Fessy reads this horrible, horrible letter that he wrote that I thought Leroy did a great job of summarizing, which was, sorry, Amber B, you suck. I don't want to run the final with you. And everybody just know that I'm going to steal Casey. What did you think about this letter and this whole idea of just taking over the deliberation and ultimately taking the anything out of anybody else's hands by saying, I want to be the house vote, and then making Leroy just safe immediately?
I mean, I have to respect kind of the cojones that he has to do that. I mean, because there was no guarantee that it was going to be a hall brawl. It could have been something he didn't stand as good of a chance at. I like kind of the braveness of it and taking his fate into his own hands, and it seems like that's always kind of been his game. That's why he chose to go for that kidnapping challenge, because, you know, he thought he would have to do it. It ended up being the other way around, but just the way he perceived it. I think that's just kind of how He likes to play the game, and with the partners that he's had Anissa. Let's see who else has been with Fessy. He was with Nani for a little while, and then he was with Amber for like a week or two. He's really been kind of like a dormant player for a little while because he's just been sitting on his skull. So I kind of respect the fact that he wanted to get a little bit more action, take control of the game a little bit more. I do feel like he like disrespected Amber B as a competitor though, because obviously Casey is the strongest, but none of these women left are like pathetic by any means.
Well, and he's going to look really foolish if Amber B beats him in the final. Yeah, he's going to look really, really, really foolish. Like him and Casey, I would probably say are the favorites, and then Corey and Cam, and then I would say CT and Amber, and I would say Leroy and Nani probably have the worst chance. We'll talk about that near the end. But he's going to look really stupid if he doesn't beat Amber B because you made this decision and you made it abundantly clear why you were making this decision. So look, I get it. I do think Fessy's a little whiny. He was very whiny tonight. Very woe is me. It was very obnoxious.
Yeah, he got a really bad edit. All the boys are ragging on him. Nani was ragging on him during the daily. Like, it was not a good look for him.
No, and it makes me wonder what's going to end up happening next week. Like, is this setting us up that Fessy has no chance? Because it seems like everybody else we have a better feel for in there. We like Leroy. We like Cam. They had a really good moment today in the hot tub. We like CT. Amber B got a pretty like little redemptive arc here. Fessy really was the only one who got a bad edit, and he got a bad edit from everybody. It wasn't just the edit. It was from all of the other players as well, which is kind of a big deal, I would think, when you're about to go into a final.
Right. I would agree with you. Yeah, it does kind of seem like they're setting him up for a downfall a little bit. My, not concern, but I guess my thought about the Fessy Casey pairing is like, I would probably want a partner who could like complement me well. Like they're strong in the areas where I'm weak and like vice versa. I feel like they have the same strengths. Like Fessy's not good at puzzles either. So if it's a bunch of math puzzles, like they could, have as big of a lead as anybody and they could be in trouble.
Yeah, John at one point had said that challenge math is very easy. He wasn't kidding. And Amber B today was really bad, but I think actually Amber B's in good shape now being with CT because CT knows how to do math and he's fast at it. I mean, it was 6496, by the way. I don't have to look at it. I don't have to figure it out. It was 928 times 7. It's 6496. That's what the code was. She never figured it out. And I don't know why it was so difficult. Maybe she's just like really that bad at math. But I think she's in a better position than if she was running the final with Fessy. Because while I think Fessy probably would have figured that out eventually, who knows? Maybe everybody in the challenge just is that bad at math with the exception of Cam. I think that CT proved that he is very quick with the puzzles and things like that. And so I think that will be more beneficial for her moving forward. And I do think that she has a pretty good amount of endurance. We didn't really get to see it tonight. Right. So I would have liked to have seen what she had, but clearly Nani doesn't have the endurance. And I think that's going to end up hurting her and Leroy. Casey and Fessy, we didn't get to see Fessy really do it. Casey, and we haven't seen Fessy at all this season because he was with Anissa for the first mini final. So really the only known right now is CT and Cam. Okay, so Cam and Corey or CT and Amber B would kind of be where I see this thing going.
That's kind of where I'm at too. I think those are just the best stacked teams in terms of like strengths and ability. And like they just seem like good partnerships too. I mean, the obvious challenge for CT and Amber B will be that they have not done anything together up until this point. So it'll be a totally fresh new relationship going into a final. But I think the benefit of that will come from the fact that CT has competed in multiple finals before and he's a 3-time winner. So I think Amber B will kind of be able to help, she will kind of be able to not his coattails, but like benefit off of his experience, I think.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about this, I think last week where CT this whole time has gotten the big T edit and all of that. Yeah. And now it's okay. He's going to be able to carry the rookie through, or that's going to be the end of his story. He's going to be kind of, even if they don't win, he's going to be Amber B's rock as they go through this grueling final challenge. And maybe that is the case. Maybe that really is what's going to happen. But I just find it to be kind of fitting that he has been paired up with the only rookie remaining in the game for the final in this season. So, but let's go and let's talk about this first challenge. So this was kind of the first thing we got in the episode after the Leroy and Cam conversation. We have this challenge and he comes in at 5:30 in the morning. I'm taking you guys. Why do you think all of the men went? What were they all thinking that made all of the men go? And was it once one man went, they just all said, you know what, let's do a men versus men, women versus women thing? Because I have to think that if one of the men would have run the challenge, even if they're not better at math, they probably would have been a little bit more better fit for the endurance portion of it. I mean, you look at Kyle at the end of this, you look at Leroy at the end of this, they were doing really well in the running portion. So what do you think was the reasoning behind all the men going?
I feel like it's just kind of like that natural reaction. Like if you're a proactive person and someone is asking for volunteers, you're going to step up and do it. And I think that, I think it was sort of a guy thing. Like once one of the guys stepped up, the rest of them were like, okay, like, we have to level the playing field a little bit. And I thought it was interesting that it shook out that way. Because if all the guys choose to go, then I don't know, if there's like one person left, what if you just kind of throw a wild card in it and you're like, nah, you got it, go ahead. Like they could have made it interesting, but.
Yeah, and there was nothing that hinted that the men were going to benefit from going and the women were going to benefit from staying. I liked Cam's. I don't even have my wig yet, so I'm not going. I thought that was really funny. But, in a more serious tone, they probably were thinking this strategically. I doubt that her not having her wig on was the only reason that she didn't go. But there was no hint from TJ at all that you might want to send your men for this, or it's not like they had tree mail like in Survivor where you're reading it and it's like, hey, we should send our strong. That does make sense. Really, there was no reasoning.
Yeah. I guess it just worked out. But I think it was good to be able to see all of the women and see what they kind of have to work with, like going into the final. I'm sure the men, it either kind of gave them like the reassurance that they needed, or in some cases, maybe it scared them a little bit. But it was like a good preview. And maybe that was the other reason too. They were like, okay, let's see what we've got here, one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it ends up going the way it does. And, CT was right last week saying that he had nothing to lose. I mean, that's got to be weird for CT to just be sitting there watching this happen. And he's probably wondering the same thing, like what was the better move? But ultimately it doesn't even end up mattering for him. So I don't know. I feel like this would have been a cooler thing to be running at even teams, so that we could have seen everybody do it, because especially if you're going to do it as calling it, going up to the final, this is kind of like your preview of the final. You would think that you'd want to have as many people running it as possible and then maybe do something a little bit lamer. Although you have to go out with a bang. So I guess, it makes sense. But either way, ultimately it just leads to a lot of Fessy whining and complaining like a baby. And, Amber B never finishes the first thing. SP Fan 68 here says Amber has number dyslexia. She tweeted that. That would make sense as to why she wasn't able to do a math problem in her head then. I mean, I totally get it, but I don't know. I still think that poor Fessy, but not poor Fessy. That's all I'll say about that, because I don't feel bad for Fessy, but I do kind of feel like why he would be frustrated in this entire situation.
Yeah, I think that challenge was why he decided to make that move that he did and write that letter and be the house vote, because I guess he just figured he'd be fine with any of the women left apart from Amber B after today. So, and I mean, you have to go with what is shown, right? Like you can't just speculate and be like, oh, she'll be fine next week. Like he went based off the evidence. So I get it. But yeah, he was rude about it. For him.
Well, the problem was he didn't want to be with her in the first place. So then he gets stuck with her, and then she does terribly, and it's like, oh, God, now my nightmare is coming true. It's like, no, you knew that this was going to be how it was going to go down. So come on. But okay, so all of this, it's a very, for an hour and a half, not very much happens. This is a show that should be an hour, especially when you start getting down in numbers. But so we've broken down the challenge. We've broken down what they did. We've broken down what Kyle was trying to accomplish, what Leroy and Cam were trying to accomplish, how Leroy kind of just threw Cam's neck out there and was like, come on, screw over Corey for really no apparent reason. All of that, though, it all leads up to Fessy beating the crap out of Kyle, broken finger. Fessy moves on. He takes Casey to nobody's surprise. Leroy comes back. He takes Nany. Don't think people were surprised with that, especially since they started on their first season together, and now they're going to run this, and they're both saying it's their last season, all of those things. And then Corey and Cam stay together, so CT and Amber B end up together. What do we think about the way that these four pairings have actually played out?
I mean, this was definitely somebody's prediction in a previous episode. We've definitely
I
talked
think
about.
we definitely talked it through and pretty much called what was going to end up happening here,
Yeah.
with Corey and Cam just being the strongest pairing. Fessy was going to probably go down. We knew Kyle was going to go down, and it was a matter of, was it going to be Fessy or Leroy, and figuring Corey and Cam would win. Leroy's not going down, and if Leroy wins, he's not throwing Corey and Cam down. So I think we had kind of predicted that it would be Fessy and Kyle going against each other, and Fessy would take Casey, because unless he couldn't take Casey, and then he would take Cam. But in terms of how the picking went, do we think Leroy made the right move? Do we think Fessy made the right move? I know you already kind of touched on how you feel that him and Casey are a little similar, but how do you think about CT just being stuck with Amber B at the end?
I mean, I think what it seems to me is that all of the guys, they just kind of view Amber B as like this wild card. And especially with today's performance, I think they were all just kind of like scared to pick her, even if, she's done well in previous challenges. It's kind of like some recency bias. They're like, oh no, like she did terrible in this. Like there's no way I want her. So I think that's why she ended up being the last one left. And also, like, CT is the rogue agent, so he doesn't really get a say. And with how powerful he is as a player and in finals, he doesn't need a say. So if you're everyone else, you absolutely leave CT with whoever you feel like is going to cause him the worst chance in the final.
And you know this more than I do. Everybody who's in this, with the exception of Amber B, has won or run a final before, right?
That is correct. Yet CT is the only winner. Casey and Fessy ran last season. Leroy and Cam have been in a couple of finals. Corey's been in several, but he's never won. So yes,
and Nani has run one as well.
Nani has run a couple, but she's never won either.
So it does make sense if you're looking at it from that standpoint. Nani and Leroy knows that Nani knows what she's getting into.
Yes.
And so that makes it easier to make that decision over Amber B, who is going to be experiencing this all for the first time.
Right.
Good. Pair her up with the most experienced one, the guy who's won it the most before. Now, with these finals, is this something where one player can just carry the other, or does it really come down to teamwork? Because even in the challenge today, in the daily, it looked like, oh, well, one player's going to do it all. But once Kyle started sprinting away from Nani, there was nothing he could do about it, because Nani was never going to catch up and he had no chance. Is that kind of how the finals go, or can one person just take over?
The thing is like the finals cover like a really long distance, and that is not the type of thing where obviously one person can just do it. There usually are a bunch of checkpoints, and it can be anything from like move these heavy rocks across the field to solve this puzzle to chug some spoiled goat milk, like whatever it is. Like there will be different checkpoints, and sometimes in things like that, you can have like the men or like the less squeamish person or whoever is better at like puzzles. You can have that person kind of take over, and the other person is like trying to catch their breath. So I think there definitely are portions of a final where somebody can kind of carry the load a little bit more. But I think on the whole, like you definitely need to have the strongest possible partnership if you hope to win, because typically like the more stacked teams end up taking it home.
Yeah, and so SP fan said you really only need you need a partner that has endurance, but you only really need one good puzzle or math person, which would be kind of what you just said,
right.
In summary. So totally makes sense. I get that. I understand kind of what we're going to be looking at going into next week. So based on the 4 pairings, I think all 8 of these people are strong competitors in one way or another. But who do we think the strongest people going into this are, and who do we think the weakest are? And don't even worry about the pairings, but who, like if you were just ranking this 1 through 8, and I'm not asking you to exactly do that, but who would you say, great, I want them, and who would you say, out of this group, even though you're strong, not going to cut it in this final?
I would take CT and Cam. Based on experience, and they're just like the most well-rounded competitors. They're good at everything. They can run, they can do the puzzles. They're just strong people. So I think they're like the most well-rounded too. I think the people in trouble, would be Nani because of her endurance, and I don't know. I guess Fessy probably because even though he is like an incredible athlete, like you can't win a final on brute force, and like
Mhm.
even if he has the endurance, if he's not able to, you know, solve puzzles or do any sort of checkpoint, then he could be in trouble there.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing Fessy doing very well in this final right now, just based on the edit and like how he's been shown as like, oh, I'm frustrated, I haven't gotten to play, I'm being hindered, I wish I could just play the game, and then nothing's happening. I could see him having a hard time in this final, but then he's paired with Casey, and I'm like, okay, so what is going to be the checkpoint that they get stuck at where it's just like, well, we suck. What happened here? I'm just having a hard time seeing which one it is, but I do agree with you that CT and Cam are certainly the best picks. It's just a matter of will Cam need to carry Corey less, or can she carry Cam, or can she carry Corey more than what CT is going to be doing with Amber? And that's why I really do think that these are the top two pairs. Nothing really against Leroy and Nani. I just don't see, after seeing what Nani did today in the running portion of that challenge, I have just like no faith in her and Leroy being able
Right.
to beat both CT and Amber and Corey and Cam.
I think also like I don't know. I don't know their exact ages, but like they have been on the show a long time, and like really between the two of them, for Nani and Leroy, they really have not made that many finals at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like they typically make a pretty deep run in the game, and they don't usually make a final. So I hate to sound pessimistic for them, but I just like I struggle to see that they have what it takes because like they've only been getting older as they've played all these seasons of the challenge, and it's not getting any easier in terms of the competition level or in terms of what they have to do. So yeah, I'm definitely bearish on Leroy and Nani as a team.
Yeah, and being that they're later in and they're not built, like nobody's built like CT, and I think that's the difference here. Like when I look at this, like Leroy is a video game character that's like a 7 at everything, but he's not a 10 at anything.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And so I think that that's the problem, where you might say to yourself, great, he's the most well-rounded, but being well-rounded doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the final. Like
Right.
I look at the challenge today that they did as the daily. If that's any indication of what the final is like, I would smoke a final. Like I would absolutely smoke a final. I can do math. I'm very fast over long distances.
Mm-hmm.
I would smoke a final. I would never get to a final though. Like that's the problem.
Yeah.
So because I'm like a 1 in everything else. I'm a 10 in a lot of the stuff for finals, but I'm a 1 in everything else. Leroy though is like a 7 across the board.
He's a jack of all trades. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not a one-trick pony. Yeah.
But I feel like I feel like that doesn't necessarily help him going into this end game. And Nani is more like, she's like a 7 and then a 5 and a 7 and then a 5. She's another one. Whereas I think Corey and Cam, you have some 10s in there for both of them. Absolutely. You might have some 4s in there, but you definitely have some 10s.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And like if your 10s balance out someone else's 5s, you're probably okay as a team.
Which is why, even though people might be overlooking it, CT and Amber kind of seem like they might be the favorite. Maybe Corey and Cam are the favorite, and then CT and Amber after that. But if you look at what Amber's going to be good at, which is the endurance portion, or at least what I think she'd be based on her frame.
Yeah.
If that's what she's good at, CT will take care of the rest, and that's fine. And did Amber have to do the disgusting challenge, the torture challenge?
She did.
I forget how she did in that one. Because it looks like she's throwing up something red in the preview, and I'm assuming that's because they're drinking or eating something.
Yeah, that's almost always part of a final, is you have to choke down something nasty. I don't really remember Amber consuming anything gross in that torture challenge. I remember Cam having problems and not like even trying on that part. But it's also like it wasn't a final, so she probably was just like, nah, whatever. Like I'm not doing this. But,
yeah, like it literally doesn't matter.
That's always something people kind of struggle with, especially when you're like these are long finals. Sometimes they span over a couple of days, and you're exhausted. You're probably a little dehydrated. I don't know when they get to eat, if they get to eat. Like I would hope they do, because otherwise that's just like insane. But they don't ever show it. So That
They're
on a
probably carrying something with them. It's almost like how today, because we saw them wake up, we see Corey and his like 19 water bottles sitting next to his bed, but we don't actually ever see him really drinking during it unless he's drinking drinks,
Right. Yeah.
So there's probably something in there, but that would be the only thing that I could see holding them up, is if Amber B had a really bad and really think my Wi-Fi is gone. It seems like you can throw it up and they don't care. Whereas in like Survivor, if you throw it up, you lose. I think that that's where I don't know how much that's going to affect Amber B in this. So we'll see. But if she can get the stuff down, I would probably say Amber and CT, Corey and Cam. Oh, and then I don't know between Fessy and Casey, like, because Fessy and Casey to me should be the favorite.
Yeah.
But based on what we saw from Fessy tonight, and based on the fact that, like you said, they are both good at the same things, I just have a hard time seeing where they beat these other teams at.
Right. And people in the comments are talking about in the preview, Casey screamed like an
I didn't
agony.
hear it. I barely was watching the preview. I'm not.
I missed that as well. So maybe that's foreshadowing for an injury.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
And maybe that's why we get this negative Fessy edit.
Because then Fessy literally never gets to play the game this season.
Yeah, because then he can't, you can't really do finals if you're injured. Somebody got injured in the final last season and they had to drop out because they had they had like a twisted or a sprained ankle or something, and half of it was on skis. I mean, you can't ski on a
no, you can't ski with a sprained. Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. I mean, I'd hate to see anybody get hurt like at the final countdown, as they dramatically played at the end there. But
yeah, I know. Who so original MTV. See, I'm with Courtney C here. So Courtney C says CT and Amber, Cam and Corey, Leroy, Nani, Fessy, and Casey. That's kind of where I'm leaning here.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of based on what we're seeing with, if Casey really does get injured, then I do feel kind of bad for Fessy, because he was a dick the way he went about the whole thing of getting Casey, but he really didn't play much this season then, because he went in very early, he got his gold skull, and then he didn't do anything the rest of the season. That's a long time to pretty much do nothing. And so if Casey does get hurt, that would suck. And it would also just be so fitting on a season that has just been loaded with injuries for somebody to have to be pulled from the game yet again. I mean, even that would be the final 2 episodes of the show. We're watching somebody who can't finish the final challenge because they break their finger, and then watch somebody get injured the next week. Like, I get that this is supposed to be a physical show. I get it's supposed to be one of those where you're competing. You're supposed to get, but having as many injuries and as many people pulled from the game as this season had, it's just not okay. It's too much. Right. And it's kind of a bummer. I mean, how many people did we lose because of injury? And I'll count Kyle in that, just because he didn't actually finish it out. I just want to
with him now. I think
7. There you go.
Prior. There's 30 people on this season. 6 is 20%. So
20%.
This is getting crazy.
20% is a lot. And so when you say, and you did that very quickly, I hope you're correct. Because you could be on the challenge and do the math portion.
You want me to divide?
I know. It's 20%.
Yep.
Yes. Well, that's 0.2. Now you have to explain percentages, Annabelle. We have people who are going to go on the challenge. They need this. But I do agree. It's too many. And then you have 7. So now we have more than 20%. And when that happens, man, that's a lot of people of your cast. You're getting close to, I mean, I guess that would be a quarter of your cast, because 8 is, more than that. 7 is less than that, but it's somewhere in there. It's 7. It's actually, what is it? 22.5%, I believe. But it doesn't matter. What does matter is that we have seen a lot of bummer endings. We've seen a lot of anticlimactic moments because of these injuries. How do you fix that going forward? I'm not watching the All-Stars challenge because honestly, I wouldn't understand what I was watching or who. I wouldn't have an attachment to any of them. But how do you fix that so that that doesn't continue to happen in a show that is meant to be physical?
I mean, I think that's always the risk you run with a physical show like that. And people do get hurt. And it is pretty common. Like, it's not just like it's gotten really bad all of a sudden. I do think it was a particular high volume injury season, but usually like pretty much every season you have at least somebody leave.
Mm-hmm.
because of injuries, so it's not uncommon in this type of show. But I think the way to fix it is I think you take some of the like dangerous elements out of it. Like I think it was that challenge where they were like wrestling on top of the truck.
Yeah, that's where Nicole and Liv, they
Liv,
both went
yeah.
out there.
I forgot they were on the season. But yeah, no, that's probably a challenge you need to tone down a little bit. I think maybe just they always wear helmets, which is important. I think maybe just making them wear like more padding, shin guards, elbow guards, stuff like
You know,
that.
the problem is though, like when you look at a challenge like the Hall Brawl, people still get stingers in the NFL. People break their shoulders and their collarbones and their arms in the NFL, and they're wearing all that padding.
Yeah.
And so I just think like these aren't professional athletes at the end of the day.
No.
Like there's a difference. Like when I do any type of workout, I'm in pain for a lot longer than a professional athlete. And so you have to think like they're not as prepared for this. And I do love a lot of these really big monumental type challenges. It's more exciting than parachuting out of a plane and then running 500. It was actually a half mile. So what good does that do me? But you know, way oh, there it was again. Sorry, it's just me. I don't know. It's a bad internet day here. But maybe they don't care because they know that they're just going to bring these people back. But that's still not fun to watch in the moment. You don't want to just be sitting here with the, oh, what if? That's not how you should go about a reality TV show. But I don't know how you fix it. How can you still make them seem very physical without them actually being overly physical to the point where people are breaking bones? Like, I don't want to watch Kyle with his finger bent that way. Like, I don't watch those types of shows. That's disgusting.
Yeah. I have to wonder if like that's why they've started putting like 30 people on a season is so they can have more physical challenges with the expectation that somebody will drop like flies, which is honestly like a bad decision in my opinion, because like, yeah, a lot of these challenges are like really badass and, you know, very intense and physical, but I mean, you have to take care of your cast to a certain degree. And like, if you expect them to keep coming back, they're not going to do it if they're just pummeled every single season. So I think part of it is like the challenges that they're choosing to do. And I think also they in previous seasons they've done a lot of challenges like over water. And I think that I mean, obviously like that can still hurt a little bit because of the surface tension when you like fall off something. But doing things like higher up and then over water, there's really just like less opportunity for like collision. And I think that can mitigate that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, because medevacs to me are always the worst thing. I mean, I know SPF fan just said, or SP fan just said, he's an SPF fan. He loves sunscreen. SP fan just said that, you know, people do get injured on Survivor too. Yeah, I know. And I hate it every time. Like there's nothing worse to me, in my opinion, than when Jonathan Penner is getting pulled from the game because of his knee. Like I hate that. And how can you avoid that? I think the best seasons of reality shows are when the game is just played the game, when you're not getting quits, you're not getting medevacs, you're not getting people kicked out of the game. That's when the game is at its best. When it's at its like purest form, and the chaos is one thing, but I don't know. I just wonder in the future seasons what they're going to do, because, you know, like I said, Kyle's finger bending that way when we knew he was going to get his ass kicked anyway. What's the point?
Yeah, everybody loves Hall Brawl, but honestly,
it's vicious.
I just want to retire it.
Yeah, it might. I mean, seriously, Amber B versus Amber M wasn't a good challenge this year. And Amber B versus, was it Big T? That wasn't a good challenge. Fessy's 2 challenges weren't good. The one, it was like dirty and it wasn't good against Nelson. So I don't know. Like, was it more exciting than some of the other ones? I don't know. I kind of would rather watch them float around on strings sometimes. Maybe that's better. It's definitely better than the one Corey did to beat Darrell, but you know, whatever.
I think they should I don't want to see them like completely like rip off Survivor, but like the pole challenge,
yeah,
that would be awesome. Like how, like that would be a good daily. Like how bad do you want this? Like you really only injured if you fall off and hit the ground funny, but
and even then you don't get injured, because we've seen Andrea Belke literally like break her body in half and she was fine.
And Michelle,
yeah, exactly. And they're both fine. So
they're both fine.
But so not much else to talk about here. Almost at the 40-minute mark. We'll call that pretty much a day. But final prediction for the final next week. What do you got?
I think Courtney C's got it right here. I think we got Amber and CT taking home the big prize. I think we got Corey and Cam with the silver, Leroy and Nani with the bronze, and then if Casey does end up getting injured, or even if she doesn't end up getting injured, I think Fessy's pride will get the better of him here.
Yeah,
So
I think it's a bad dynamic for Casey and
is.
Fessy after seeing the way it went down tonight. I'm not super stoked about it, and it seems like everybody else has a chip on their shoulder. To be different, though, I will flip-flop Leroy and Nani and Corey and Cam, even though I think that Courtney C is probably right. I'll just flip-flop those two. But I just think CT and Amber are going to win this thing because of CT, and I think Amber's good enough at the other stuff. As long as she doesn't have to do a math problem, I think she's going to be absolutely fine. So that's what I would say is going to end up happening. And next week, is it just an hour and a half, hour, 2 hours? How do they do it? Do we have any idea?
I will check my TV and see what time it is going to record to, but we'll see. Yeah, I feel like normally the final spans like a couple of episodes, but this is the final episode, right?
Yeah, I think it's this and then the reunion thing the next
And then
week.
the
So I think this is it,
okay.
which we're not going to recap. So
Right. So my hope would be that like all of the final is next week and they don't split it up over the course of the reunion, because that would be super annoying to have to like hang on for another week just so they can recap. You know, that's all. I don't, reunion shows are not super important in a show like this, in my opinion, because there's not, you know, everybody knows each other at this point. Like, it's not really, there's not much more to say. So let's see. This looks like it is on from. Okay, so the description says the remaining 8 agents arrive at TJ's final and begin an exhausting mission. One team's fate becomes uncertain following a shocking revelation. This is what my cable channel says. And it says 8 to 9 p.m. So that's only
it's an hour. So is it going to be split into 2 different episodes then? Because that's what it seems like. They begin the final. It doesn't seem like this is the last episode. So
I think we got 1 more week here. 2 more weeks. I'm sorry, Phil. I know that was not what you wanted to hear, but that's what it's looking like.
All right, everybody. We'll be back next week, maybe, if I can make it through to then. Oh my God. All right.
I got this. So Phil's gonna tap out at the end here. But.
I know. Oh my God. Well, I mean, like, what are we supposed to discuss during a final where there's nothing that even happens? There's no elimination or anything. Oh my God. All right. Anyway, we'll be back again next week discussing part of the final, which, oh man, if they can just drag it out, huh? And I'm sure that we'll get 900 cliffhangers of nothing. I'm just going to start watching Ridiculousness and not watching the hour and then recapping the episode of Ridiculousness because it's more shocking. That is so frustrating. All right. Anyway, we'll be back next week, next Wednesday, recapping whatever the hell next week's episode is, whether it's the last one or the one before the last one. God, this is going to take up 5 months of my life. That is insane. Hope you're all enjoying this a lot more than clearly I am right now. I don't even hate it that much. I just can't believe it's still going, and they just milk things so much on MTV.
They're milking it good.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is unbelievable. We'll be back next week. John should be here for that one. And anyway, everything else that's going on, John and I are doing our movie podcast on Tuesdays. That's pretty good. We are enjoying that. Classic Survivor, we hit our last episode of the series next week. We're going to be talking about the Lex and Boston Rob classic episode from Survivor All-Stars. Become a patron, patreon.com/Survivor Specialist, and pray for me because I cannot believe that there are still 2 more weeks of this left. No offense to Annabelle or John. I just cannot believe there are 2 more weeks of this left. Good night.